If a frightened child silently asked for help, would you notice? Would you know what to do? The autumn air carried the scent of maple and earth as Keanu Reeves, dressed simply in a black jacket and jeans, found a quiet bench in Central Park. Pulling out his sketchbook, he became lost in capturing the rippling lake and distant skyline, until a small shadow fell across his page. What happened in the next 24 hours would reveal a darkness no one suspected, and remind the world why some heroes don't wear capes. For nearly an hour, the world around him faded away as he focused on capturing the light and shadows. The park bustled with life around him, joggers tracing paths along the water's edge, couples strolling hand in hand, families spreading picnic blankets on patches of grass. Keanu absorbed it all, translating the quiet energy of human connection into gentle lines on his page. He was so absorbed in his work that he didn't notice the small figure approaching until she was standing directly in front of him, her shadow falling across his sketchbook. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. A messy braid framed a face far too solemn for her young years. Her eyes, large and brown, carried an expression no child should wear. Fear. Caution. A wariness beyond her years. She wore a purple coat that seemed too large for her small frame, the sleeves rolled up to free her hands. In her arms, she clutched a well-loved stuffed rabbit, its fur worn thin from years of holding, one ear slightly torn and re-sewn with clumsy stitches. Keanu looked up, offering a gentle smile. "Hello there." The girl didn't speak. Instead, she glanced nervously over her shoulder toward a man seated on a bench about 50 yards away. He was focused on his phone, occasionally looking up to scan the park with sharp, calculating eyes. There was nothing immediately alarming about him, well dressed in a gray overcoat, clean-shaven, with the practiced composure of someone accustomed to authority. Yet something in the way the girl's shoulders tensed when she looked at him made Keanu uneasy. The man's posture, though casual at first glance, had an underlying rigidity, like a predator feigning disinterest. When she turned back to Keanu, her small hand dipped into her coat pocket and withdrew a crumpled piece of paper, folded several times and slightly damp at the edges, as though it had been handled repeatedly with nervous fingers. Without a word, she thrust it toward him, her eyes never leaving his face, watching for his reaction. Keanu accepted it, watching as the girl took a small step back but didn't leave. With growing concern, he unfolded the note, the paper soft and worn in his hands. The handwriting was shaky but legible, written in blue ink that had smudged in places. "Please help. My daughter Lily is in danger. He's taking her away tonight. Not her father. Name is Martin Webb. Has fake documents. Real father looking for her. I'm being watched. Police didn't believe me. 442 Westmore Apartments, #7B. Please hurry." A chill ran through Keanu as he looked up at the girl, Lily, whose eyes were now filling with tears, though none spilled over. The control in one so young was heartbreaking, a child who had learned to contain her emotions, to make herself small and unnoticed. He glanced again at the man on the distant bench, who had risen to his feet, pocketing his phone with deliberate movements as his gaze swept the area more intently now. With deliberate calm that belied the sudden rush of adrenaline, Keanu tucked the note into his pocket and closed his sketchbook. "Do you like ducks, Lily?" he asked conversationally, his voice steady despite the alarm bells ringing in his mind. Lily nodded, her gaze darting nervously to the man who had begun walking in their direction, his stride purposeful. "Me too," Keanu continued, gathering his things and standing slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might attract attention. "Would you like to show me your favorite spot to watch them?" Another nod, more urgent this time. Lily clutched her rabbit tighter, the stuffed animal pressed against her chest like a shield. As they began walking along the path that curved behind a stand of trees, effectively placing a visual barrier between them and the approaching man, Keanu pulled out his phone. With one hand casually resting on Lily's shoulder in a protective gesture, he dialed 911, keeping his pace unhurried while creating distance with each step. "This is Keanu Reeves," he said quietly when the operator answered, his voice low enough that only Lily could hear. "I need immediate police assistance at Central Park near the Bow Bridge. I believe I'm with a child who's being trafficked." Though professional, the operator's voice hitched slightly, at his name and the gravity of the situation. "Officers are being dispatched now, Mr. Reeves. Can you safely remain where you are?" Keanu glanced back. The man had quickened his pace, his expression hardening as he realized his quarry was moving away. "Negative. We need to keep moving. I'll head toward the 72nd Street entrance." He provided a brief description of himself, Lily, and the man following them before ending the call. Looking down at Lily, he gave her a reassuring smile. "Help is on the way. Let's keep walking, okay?" They continued along the winding path, Keanu guiding them toward more populated areas where the Sunday afternoon crowd would provide some safety. He spoke lightly about squirrels and ducks, but every nerve in his body remained taut, ready. Lily remained silent, but her hand had found its way into his, small fingers gripping with surprising strength. When the wail of approaching sirens pierced the air, Keanu felt Lily's hand tighten in his. Behind them, the sound of running footsteps suddenly halted. Keanu resisted the urge to look back, instead continuing forward at a steady pace. Two police cruisers pulled up to the park entrance ahead of them, officers emerging with practiced efficiency. Only then did Keanu turn to see the man in the gray coat veering off onto another path, his pace casual but his posture rigid with thwarted purpose. One of the officers spotted him immediately and broke into pursuit while the others approached Keanu and Lily. "Mr. Reeves," a female officer asked, her hand resting lightly on her holstered weapon as her partner positioned himself to watch the surrounding area. Her nameplate read Chen. "Yes," Keanu confirmed. "This is Lily. She gave me this." He carefully removed the note from his pocket, handing it to Officer Chen, who read it quickly, her expression growing grave. "We're going to need both of you to come with us," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "Lily, would that be okay?" Lily looked up at Keanu, who nodded encouragingly. Only then did she give a small nod of her own. As Officer Chen escorted them to the waiting cruiser, her partner's radio crackled to life. "Suspect in custody," came the terse update. "Resisted initially. Found in possession of multiple IDs and a ticket for tonight's red-eye to Zagreb." Chen's eyes met Keanu's over Lily's head. No words were necessary, they both understood what had nearly happened, what might still be happening at the address in that crumpled note. Detective Maya Ortiz had seen a lot in her 15 years with the NYPD's Special Victims Unit, but receiving a call about Keanu Reeves sheltering a potentially trafficked child at the 19th precinct was definitely a first. The precinct was buzzing with barely contained excitement despite the seriousness of the situation. News of the actor's presence had spread like wildfire, though the officers maintained professional restraint. When she entered the interview room, she found the actor sitting quietly beside a small girl who was methodically coloring a picture of a rabbit, her actual stuffed one propped up beside her. Keanu looked up as Maya entered, his expression serious and concerned. Despite having just been brought in from the park, he projected a calm that seemed to be keeping the child beside him steady as well. "Mr. Reeves," Maya acknowledged with a professional nod. "I'm Detective Ortiz." "Thank you for coming so quickly," Keanu said, his voice low and measured. "This is Lily. The note is there." He gestured to a plastic evidence bag containing the crumpled paper, which had already been photographed and processed by the crime scene unit. Maya picked it up, scanning the contents. We're working on verifying the address right now. Officers have been dispatched to Westmore Apartments. She turned her attention to Lily, crouching down to eye level. Hi there, Lily. I'm Maya. I'm a police officer. Can you tell me about the man who was with you in the park? Lily's crayon paused mid-stroke, hovering over the paper. She looked at Keanu, who gave her an encouraging nod, his presence clearly providing a security that allowed her to consider speaking. Uncle Martin, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, the first words Keanu had heard her speak. He's not really my uncle. Where's your mom, sweetheart? Maya asked gently, maintaining eye contact but careful not to crowd the girl's space. At home. She doesn't feel good a lot. Uncle Martin gives her medicine. Lily's small fingers tightened around the crayon until her knuckles turned white, the only visible sign of her distress. He says we're going on a long trip tonight. Mom was crying. Maya and Keanu exchanged a look of understanding, the implications clear. The detective pulled a chair closer, angling it so she wasn't blocking Lily's view of Keanu, whose presence seemed to be the child's anchor in this unfamiliar situation. Lily, can you tell me your full name? And your mom's name? Lily Parker. My mom is Sarah. My dad's name is David, but he doesn't live with us anymore. Her voice dropped even lower, almost inaudible. Uncle Martin says Dad doesn't want us, but Mom said that's not true. Before Maya could ask another question, a tall officer appeared at the door, gesturing urgently. Maya excused herself and stepped outside, leaving Keanu alone with Lily once more. Keanu remained with Lily, who had returned to her coloring, though her hand trembled slightly, the green crayon wobbling across the paper as she filled in the rabbit's background. The room was quiet save for the soft scratch of wax on paper and the muffled sounds of the precinct beyond the door. That's a great rabbit, he commented, pointing to her drawing. Does your real rabbit have a name? Hoppy, Lily replied, the ghost of a smile flickering across her face for the first time, there and gone so quickly Keanu almost missed it. Dad gave him to me. Hoppy looks like a good friend. Lily nodded solemnly. He helps me be brave when I'm scared. Keanu felt a tightness in his chest, a mixture of sadness for what this child had endured and admiration for her resilience. Being scared is okay, you know. Even grown-ups get scared sometimes. Lily's fingers relaxed their grip on the crayon, and she gently pressed Hoppy against Keanu's hand. The worn rabbit's ear brushed his skin as her shoulders visibly lowered, the tension in her small face easing for the first time since they'd met. Are you scared sometimes? Lily asked, looking up at him with wide eyes that held both skepticism and hope. Yes, Keanu admitted honestly. But I've learned that doing the right thing, even when you're scared, is what bravery really means. Lily seemed to consider this, turning the crayon between her fingers. Mom was brave, she said after a moment. She told me to find someone with kind eyes if Uncle Martin wasn't looking. She said they would help. The implication of those words that Sarah Parker had seen her situation clearly enough to prepare her daughter, despite whatever control Webb had exerted, spoke volumes about the woman's strength. Before Keanu could respond, the door opened as Maya returned, her expression grave but controlled. She gestured for Keanu to join her outside. After promising Lily he'd be right back, he stepped into the hallway. We found her mother, Maya said without preamble, her professional demeanor belied by the tightness around her eyes. Semi-conscious, signs of prolonged drugging. Paramedics are with her now. And Mr. Reeves. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. We found evidence that they were indeed planning to transport Lily tonight. Fake passports, plane tickets to a non-extradition country. Background check on this Martin Webb shows multiple aliases and possible connections to a known trafficking network. Keanu leaned against the wall, processing the information, the full weight of what might have happened settling over him. What about her father? The note mentioned him. David Parker, Maya confirmed, glancing down at her notepad. We've located him in Boston. He's been fighting for custody for months, filed multiple missing persons reports when Sarah and Lily disappeared 3 weeks ago. Webb apparently inserted himself into Sarah's life when she was vulnerable after the separation, isolated her, got her addicted to prescription drugs, and was preparing to disappear with Lily. What happens to her now? Keanu asked, glancing through the window at Lily, who was now showing her stuffed rabbit the picture she'd colored, her lips moving in a silent conversation with her only constant companion. We'll keep her safe until her father can get here. Should be by tonight. He's already on his way. Dropped everything the moment we called. Keanu nodded, a decision forming. I'd like to stay, if that's okay. At least until her father arrives. Maya studied him for a moment, then nodded. That would probably help her. It's not every day a child finds herself rescued by John Wick. A hint of a smile crossed Keanu's face. Let's not mention that particular role around her. The hours at the precinct passed in a blur. While waiting for her father, Lily gradually opened up as the safety of her situation settled in. When Maya brought in a tablet for a video call with her mother in the hospital, Keanu stepped out to give them privacy. Tears welled in Lily's eyes as her mother's weak but smiling face appeared on the screen, a fragile lifeline restored. By the time Keanu returned, Lily's face had brightened. Mom's going to be okay, she informed him seriously. She's very tired, but she said to thank you for helping us. I'm glad she's feeling better, Keanu replied, settling back into his chair. Did she tell you your dad is coming? Lily nodded, her hands fidgeting with Hoppy's ears. She said he's been looking for us the whole time. A shadow crossed her face. Uncle Martin lied. Some people do that, Keanu acknowledged. But there are more good people in the world than bad ones, I promise. The reunion between Lily and her father was something Keanu would remember for a long time. David Parker burst into the precinct shortly after 9 p.m., his face etched with worry and hope, eyes red-rimmed from what had clearly been weeks of sleepless nights. When Lily saw him, she dropped Hoppy and ran, launching herself into his arms with a cry that held both relief and the release of long-held fear. Daddy! You did want us. Uncle Martin said you didn't, but Mom said to find help and I did. David held his daughter tightly, tears streaming down his face, one hand cradling the back of her head as though she might vanish if he loosened his grip. I never stopped looking for you, Lily Bug. Never. Not for 1 second. Keanu stood off to the side, watching the scene with a quiet sense of satisfaction. As the father and daughter embraced, Detective Ortiz approached with an update, her voice low enough not to intrude on the moment unfolding before them. Webb is in custody, facing multiple charges, she said. And Ms. Parker is stabilized. She'll need treatment for the dependency issues, but the doctors are optimistic. She glanced at the reunited family, a rare smile softening her professional demeanor. You made a difference today, Mr. Reeves. Keanu shook his head slightly. Lily made the difference. She found the courage to ask for help. Eventually, David Parker approached Keanu, still holding Lily's hand tightly in his own, as if afraid to break contact even for a moment. His eyes were filled with a gratitude that went beyond words. Mr. Reeves, he began, voice thick with emotion, I don't know how to thank you. No thanks necessary, Keanu interrupted gently. I'm just glad Lily is safe now. Lily looked up at him, her earlier fear replaced with something like wonder. Are you really the same person from the movies? Keanu crouched down to her level, bringing himself eye to eye with the child who had shown such remarkable courage. I am. But today, you were the real hero of the story. She considered this, her brow furrowing in thought. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, smooth stone, pink and white, polished by water, the kind found along riverbeds and lockshores. This is my lucky rock. I want you to have it. Keanu accepted the simple gift with the solemnity it deserved. I'll keep it safe, he promised, closing his fingers around the stone. As he watched them leave, Lily looking back one last time to wave, Keanu felt the weight of the small stone in his hand. In a world of complicated exchanges and hollow gestures, there was something profoundly moving about the unfiltered gratitude of a child, a lucky rock freely given, with no expectation of return. The weeks that followed were busy ones for Keanu. The film wrapped, interviews were given, meetings attended. The incident in the park made the news briefly. It was impossible to keep something involving a celebrity of his stature completely quiet, but his publicist had managed to keep the details minimal, focusing on the successful rescue rather than the darker elements of what might have happened. Privately, Keanu followed the case. Webb had been connected to at least 3 other similar situations, vulnerable women with young daughters, all targeted through seemingly innocent meetings at support groups for single mothers. The man's network was being dismantled, link by link, as investigations expanded. Sarah Parker's testimony, once she fully recovered, proved invaluable in connecting the dots. 6 months later, Keanu was back in New York for the premiere of his latest film. Among the usual press and publicity events, he had scheduled one private meeting, a visit to a newly opened center for at-risk children and families in Brooklyn, tucked away on a quiet street lined with brownstones. The Sarah Parker Foundation had been established with generous anonymous funding, though Detective Ortiz had her suspicions about the source. It provided safe housing, counseling, and legal services to families vulnerable to predators like Martin Webb. The center itself was a warm, welcoming space, colorful murals on the walls, comfortable furniture, and play areas designed to help traumatized children feel secure. Sarah Parker herself, now 4 months sober and rebuilding her life, greeted Keanu at the entrance. The woman who had been barely conscious when rescued from Webb's apartment had transformed, clear-eyed, standing tall, her handshake firm and confident. Beside her stood Lily, her hair neatly braided, her eyes clear and bright, bouncing slightly on her toes with excitement when she saw him. "Mr. Reeves," Sarah said, extending her hand. "Welcome to our center." "Thank you for having me," Keanu replied warmly. "And please, call me Keanu." As they walked through the facility, Sarah explained how they had already helped 15 families escape dangerous situations, how they worked closely with law enforcement to identify potential trafficking attempts, and how Lily herself had become something of a symbol of hope for the children who came through their doors. "She tells them that being afraid doesn't mean you're not brave," Sarah said, her voice catching slightly as she watched her daughter showing another child how to use the art supplies in the recreation room. "She learned that from you." "She already knew it," Keanu replied. "Some lessons are just waiting for the right moment to be remembered." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. "There were moments, even at my lowest, when I knew something was wrong. But Webb was skilled at what he did. He isolated us so gradually that by the time I realized the danger, I had no phone, no access to money, and a dependency he controlled." She took a deep breath. "That note to Lily was my last clear moment before the drugs took over again." "You saved her," Keanu said simply. "We both did. And now we're trying to save others." She gestured to a wall covered with children's artwork. "Every one of these represents a family that found their way here. Some through law enforcement, some through our outreach programs. All of them breaking cycles of isolation and control." Later, As Keanu prepared to leave, Lily approached him with a carefully wrapped package, the paper decorated with hand-drawn stars and hearts. "I made this for you," she said, watching eagerly as he opened it, her eyes bright with anticipation. Inside was a frame drawing a colorful scene of Central Park with two figures sitting on a bench. One was clearly Keanu, recognizable by the dark hair and kind eyes. Beside him sat a small girl with a rabbit, surrounded by a faint golden glow. Above them, in careful letters that betrayed hours of concentration, were the words, "Sometimes heroes are just people who listen." Keanu traced the words with his finger, something tightening in his throat. "This is beautiful, Lily. I'll treasure it." "Mom says you were just in the right place at the right time," Lily said thoughtfully, her head tilted as she studied him. "But I think you were the right person at the right time. That's different." Keanu smiled, reaching into his pocket to touch the small pink and white stone he still carried. "Maybe we both were." Autumn sunlight streamed through the trees, casting long golden fingers across the sidewalk as children's laughter echoed from a nearby playground, sounds of innocence preserved, of futures reclaimed. As he walked away from the center, disappearing into the bustling New York streets, no one would have guessed that the man in the simple black jacket was anything other than another anonymous face in the crowd. But Keanu carried with him the weight of a promise, not one spoken aloud, but etched into his heart through the trust of a child who had reached out when it mattered most. Some heroes don't wear capes. Some don't even see themselves as heroes at all. They simply do what's right when the moment calls for courage, and in doing so, remind us of the difference one person can make in a world that sometimes feels too broken to fix. For Lily Parker and the children who would find safety because of her story, that difference meant everything. If you had the chance to be someone's miracle, would you answer the call? Change doesn't always come with a roar, sometimes, it starts with a whisper and a willing heart. In a world where child trafficking awareness remains critically important, quiet heroism like Keanu's, inspired by true stories of everyday courage, serves as a powerful reminder that vigilance saves lives. Would you be ready to be that one person when the moment calls for courage? If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might need this reminder today.